Chapter 1. The Unexpected Call. The Tessera system had always been a region of the galaxy that few ventured into, its remote location often discouraging many from exploring its deep expanses. The planet Zereth, orbiting the third star of the system, was no exception. It was a world of extremes, known for its violent, unpredictable weather patterns, rugged terrain, and the dangerous wildlife that had evolved in isolation over millions of years. The thick, sprawling forests that covered the planet's surface were home to some of the most formidable creatures in the galaxy. Creatures that had developed their own forms of survival that were difficult to comprehend for any outside observer. Zereth wasn't a planet you would visit for leisure, nor was it one for casual exploration. Colonization was still a distant dream, far from being realized, as the planet's wild ecosystems and dangerous environment repelled even the most well-equipped colonists. But that didn't stop the few brave scientists, adventurers, and resource gatherers who dared to explore the planet. It was to one such station, a small research outpost on the edge of the planet's most treacherous wilderness, that Liam Donnelly was sent. Liam wasn't a scientist, and he wasn't an explorer. He was a mechanic, a man who spent his days fixing things, anything, really. Whether it was the equipment for the scientists stationed at the research facility, the machinery used to harvest precious resources, or the communications array that sometimes struggled with the planet's tumultuous atmospheric conditions, Liam was always the one called upon when something broke down. He didn't mind. He preferred it this way. The work was steady, and the solitude was comforting, especially in a place as isolated as Zereth. The small, rugged outpost was nestled on the planet's edge, where the jungle met the craggy mountains. It wasn't much, just a series of metal buildings connected by narrow walkways. But it was a place where a man like Liam could get lost in his work and avoid the chaos of larger human settlements. The cold air and constant gusts of wind from the peaks were a welcome distraction from the clutter of human drama, and it allowed him to focus on the job at hand. Yet, despite the comfort of routine, life on Zereth was never completely predictable. The planet's volatile nature had a way of reminding its inhabitants that they were never truly in control. The weather could change on a dime, shifting from sunny and clear to violent storms within the span of a few hours. And the wildlife, particularly the predators that roamed the jungles, had a reputation for being both intelligent and ruthless. These were creatures Liam had heard about in passing, but they weren't his concern. At least, not until the day everything changed. It started like any other afternoon. Liam was working in the station's primary engineering bay, surrounded by the hum of equipment and the steady rhythm of his tools. His shift had been uneventful, the routine of repairing communication arrays and recalibrating the geothermal energy generators a constant in his life. But as the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon and the skies turned a deep shade of purple, a sudden, frantic distress signal came through the station's comms. At first, Liam thought it was another technical glitch. The station's comm system was known to have issues from time to time, especially when the atmosphere played tricks on the frequency channels. But this signal wasn't a routine check-in, and it wasn't a malfunction. The voice that crackled through the static was frantic and desperate. "This is Field Research Team 7. We are under attack." The creature, its dash, the transmission cut off abruptly, the signal lost in the middle of the message. Liam froze for a moment, uncertainty creeping into his chest. He knew that the research teams were often in the field, studying the planet's wildlife and ecosystem, but he hadn't expected anything like this. His instincts kicked in, and before he had time to think about the risks or the dangers, he grabbed his equipment and headed for the comm station. It was just a few hundred meters from the engineering bay, but it felt like miles. As he jogged through the narrow corridors, the weight of the unknown began to settle on his shoulders. His mind raced with possible scenarios. What had happened to the research team? Had they encountered one of the apex predators that roamed the jungles? Was the situation dire? The emergency transmission from the research station played again in his mind. The voice of the scientist had sounded terrified, but there had been something else, a sense of urgency, a need for help. The signal had come from deep within the jungle, an area that was notoriously dangerous even for the experienced research teams. The native wildlife in that part of the jungle was known for its intelligence, its ability to outwit and ambush intruders. Ilera, the alien leopard-like creatures that prowled the wilderness, were one such predator, and the thought of encountering one was enough to send a shiver down anyone's spine. Liam reached the comm station, the door sliding open automatically as he approached. He quickly input the access codes and brought up the emergency feed. The screen blinked, showing the transmission from the research team. It was clear now that something had gone terribly wrong. We're pinned down. The creature. It's a leopard. No, it's something else. Please help. The transmission crackled with static, but the message was clear. The research team had encountered a creature, a terrifying hybrid, part predator, part something else. But what exactly was the creature? And what had happened to the rest of the team? Liam could only guess at the answers, but one thing was certain. They needed help, and they needed it now. Without hesitation, Liam gathered his gear: a standard rescue pack, an emergency medical kit, and a weapon he didn't think he'd ever need. The station was equipped with a small hovercraft, built for navigating the treacherous terrain of Xeritha's jungles. The vehicle was capable of flying low over the thick underbrush, offering just enough clearance to avoid being ambushed by any large creatures. Liam knew it was his only chance. If he could reach the research team in time, he might be able to save them. Liam keyed in the coordinates for the jungle base and fired up the hovercraft. As the vehicle hummed to life, he took a deep breath and set the controls. He was heading into the unknown, into the very heart of danger. But there was no time to waste. His mind was focused only on one thing: reaching the team before it was too late. The dense underbrush of Xeritha's jungle swallowed the hovercraft as it pushed deeper into the wilderness. The sounds of distant creatures echoed in the background, and the atmosphere grew thicker with every passing second. The jungle felt alive, breathing, waiting. Liam's knuckles gripped the steering console, his eyes scanning the dark path ahead. There were no signs of the research team, no signals, nothing to indicate they were nearby, despite the urgency of their distress call. His instincts told him to be cautious. His years of training and experience had taught him to approach unknown situations carefully. But there was a deep gnawing feeling in his gut, one that told him this wasn't just another rescue mission. It was more. The dense, towering trees on either side of him seemed to press in, their thick trunks twisted like ancient sentinels guarding the secrets of the jungle. Occasionally, the soft glow of bioluminescent plants would illuminate the path, casting an eerie light over the surroundings. Liam had read about the unique flora of Xerith, how it could create the illusion of light even in the darkest corners of the jungle. The planet was a living, breathing enigma, beautiful yet lethal. The predators here, even the ones not seen by human eyes, were dangerous in ways unimaginable to most. And then there were the creatures like the Ilera, the apex predators that were nearly impossible to avoid once you entered their territory. Liam knew the dangers of the jungle, but he hadn't come this far to let fear dictate his actions. The research team had sent out a distress signal. They needed him. And though there was a growing sense of dread in his chest, there was no turning back now. His hands tightened on the controls, urging the hovercraft forward as the landscape started to shift. The clearing where the research base was located came into view, the edge of the structure now visible through the trees. The walls of the station, though made of durable alloys, were weathered and worn from the constant assault of Xeritha's fierce climate. As the vehicle crept forward, Liam's eyes scanned the area. There were no signs of the research team. No lights flickering in the windows, no movement outside. The clearing was disturbingly silent, too quiet for his liking. A soft, unsettling chill ran down his spine as the air thickened. He slowed the craft, guiding it carefully through the vegetation and toward the small landing pad that marked the edge of the station. As he set the vehicle down gently, a sharp feeling of unease settled in his chest. The jungle around him was too still, and the closer he got to the station, the more he could feel the weight of something unseen lurking just beyond the trees. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. Without wasting any more time, he grabbed his gear, slinging his weapon over his shoulder, and made his way toward the research station's entrance. The station's door slid open with a soft hiss as he approached, and Liam hesitated for just a moment before stepping inside. The interior of the base was eerily quiet. The hum of machinery was absent, and the faint sound of footsteps was all but gone. Normally, in a research outpost like this, there was always some noise: footsteps, chatter, the clinking of tools, but here, there was nothing. Not a soul in sight. The unsettling silence was a warning that something had gone terribly wrong. The station's emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie glow on the walls. Liam moved cautiously through the main hall, his boots silent on the metal flooring. Every room he passed seemed untouched, the surfaces undisturbed. The lab equipment, The scientific instruments and the data terminals were all still in place. But the station's inhabitants, where were they? The comms panel was just ahead, and Liam moved quickly, his mind racing as he approached the terminal. He needed to know what happened to the research team. He needed answers. Reaching the console, he keyed in his access code, and the screen flickered to life. The image of one of the scientists appeared on the monitor, but the transmission was static-filled, distorted. "Creature, big in shadows, help us." The voice was faint, weak, but it was unmistakable. Liam's heart dropped. The message was barely coherent, but it was enough. A predator had attacked, one of the creatures from the jungle, and now the team was in danger, perhaps trapped somewhere inside the station or out in the wilderness. The message ended abruptly, the screen flickering before cutting to static once again. Liam's mind raced. He needed to act, and fast. The creature had to still be near. That much was clear. The station's emergency systems were active, but it seemed as if the creature had somehow breached the perimeter, forcing the research team into hiding or worse, trapping them. His gut twisted with unease as he ran through the next steps in his mind. First, he needed to locate the team. He had no idea how much time he had left before the creature, whatever it was, returned to finish its hunt. He couldn't afford to waste time. Liam turned back toward the entrance, his boots echoing in the silence as he made his way toward the main exit of the station. Chapter 2. The Predator in the Shadows. The jungle outside was much darker than before, with the thick foliage casting long, stretching shadows that seemed to move with every gust of wind. Liam's pulse quickened, his senses sharpened to every sound and shift in the air. He had entered the jungle at night, and the weight of it, the noise, the disorienting sounds of creatures in the trees, the rush of wind through the leaves was overwhelming. But something in the air felt different tonight, like the jungle itself was holding its breath. The creature, that was what had taken the research team. Liam could sense it, lurking somewhere in the trees, its presence almost tangible in the oppressive air. It was intelligent, it was deadly, and it was close. He didn't know what kind of predator he was dealing with. He had heard about the apex creatures of Xerath, but none of them had been documented in detail. All he knew was that he had to act fast. As Liam moved further into the underbrush, he thought about the research team's final transmission. They had been under attack, and they had sounded terrified. But why hadn't they retreated to the station's secure core? Why hadn't they activated the full defense systems? Something wasn't adding up. Something about this situation felt wrong. It wasn't just an attack. It was more calculated than that. More personal. Liam approached the edge of a dense thicket, his weapon raised and ready. His breathing was steady, his heart pounding, but he forced himself to remain calm. His training had always been about staying cool under pressure, and now was no different. He scanned the area, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow, searching for any sign of movement. A rustle came from the trees to his left, followed by the distinct snapping of branches. Liam froze, every muscle tensing, his hand gripping his weapon tightly. There it was. The creature. It was close, moving silently through the jungle, as if it were one with the forest itself. He barely saw it in the dim light, but its shape, massive, sleek, and powerful, was unmistakable. Then, without warning, the creature emerged from the shadows. It was a leopard, but not just any leopard. This was a creature unlike anything Liam had ever seen. Its body was sleek and covered in dark, iridescent scales, glistening in the faint light like a predator adapted to both the wilds of Xerath and the galaxy's deadliest environments. Its eyes gleamed a sharp, predatory yellow, and its teeth long, curved, and sharp looked capable of tearing through anything in its path. Liam's blood ran cold as he locked eyes with the creature, his breath caught in his throat. The creature took a slow, measured step forward, then another. It wasn't just observing him, it was hunting him, calculating its next move. It was too smart for a mere animal. It was something else entirely. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the creature moved. It lunged at him with incredible speed, its claws slashing through the air, but Liam was ready. He raised his weapon just in time, firing a warning shot into the air. The creature froze for a moment, its eyes narrowing as it assessed the new threat. Liam didn't give it a chance to react. He fired again, this time hitting the ground at its feet, sending up a shower of dirt and forcing it to retreat back into the jungle. Liam didn't hesitate. He sprinted forward, not to chase the creature, but to reach the team. He had no time to fight. The research team was still out there injured, hiding, or worse, and they needed him now. Liam's pulse raced as he moved quickly, maneuvering through the dense underbrush with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years navigating hostile environments. His instincts were sharper now, honed to a razor's edge by the sudden rush of danger and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The creature, whatever it was, had given him a taste of its power, but that wasn't what mattered right now. The research team's safety was his priority. Every movement was calculated. He kept low, his boots barely making a sound against the wet leaves and soil, the dampness of the jungle clinging to his clothes as the air thickened with humidity. The wind had shifted, and now it was carrying the unmistakable scent of something else blood. It wasn't fresh, but it was enough to put Liam on edge. His breath quickened as he followed the scent, every muscle in his body screaming for him to hurry. The research team had been close when they sent their distress signal, but how much time had passed since then? What state were they in now? As Liam pushed deeper into the jungle, the undergrowth seemed to close in around him, vines twisting and turning as if the jungle itself was conspiring to slow his progress. The trees, enormous and ancient, loomed overhead, their thick canopies blocking out the light and casting the path in near darkness. Despite the oppressive silence that surrounded him, Liam felt the presence of something watching. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. The predator was still out there, moving with a fluid grace that made it nearly impossible to track. Liam had been a soldier once, a veteran of harsh battles on distant planets, and his experience had taught him the value of patience in the face of danger. He knew how to remain calm, how to think even when the stakes were high. But this was different. The jungle was alive, every shadow hiding something that could tear him apart in an instant. The predator was no ordinary creature. The way it moved, the intelligence in its eyes, it was more than just an apex predator. It was a sentient being, a creature that had adapted to its environment in ways that no one, not even the most seasoned biologists, could have predicted. And that made it a far more dangerous adversary than anything he'd faced before. The blood scent grew stronger as he pressed forward, and soon, Liam spotted something in the distance movement. At first, it was just a flicker of shadow, but as he got closer, he saw it clearly, a body. The lifeless form of one of the research team members lay crumpled on the ground, a pool of dark blood slowly soaking into the soil around them. Liam's heart sank as he recognized the uniform, the black and orange jumpsuit of the field researchers. The body had been torn apart, the limbs mangled beyond recognition, as though the creature had attacked with a primal, unrelenting force. There was no time to mourn. Liam gritted his teeth, forcing himself to keep moving, to keep searching for the others. The predator could be anywhere, but he couldn't let it stop him. The rest of the team was depending on him. The jungle seemed even more oppressive now, the shadows darker, the air thicker. It was as if the world had turned against him. But he couldn't back down. Not now. Liam pushed on, searching the ground for more signs of the team, but the jungle had swallowed them whole. The blood trail was faint now, leading him deeper into the heart of the wilderness. It was then that he heard a soft, almost imperceptible sound, a rustling in the distance. He froze, every muscle locking into place as his eyes darted across the dark jungle around him. The predator. It was close. Too close. The rustling grew louder, closer now, and suddenly, Liam saw movement in the shadows ahead. A flicker of golden eyes caught the light from his helmet as the creature, the leopard, emerged from the darkness. It was massive, its body sleek and muscular, moving with the kind of grace that only a hunter of its caliber could possess. But there was something else now. The creature was no longer just a predator. It was protecting something. Liam's heart skipped a beat as he saw a small, trembling form curled up in the creature's protective embrace. Ilera, the very same alien girl who had somehow become the focus of the research team's investigation, was lying motionless beneath the creature's massive form. The sight froze Liam in his tracks. He had come to rescue the research team, but now, he found himself staring down the barrel of a predator and the very thing it was protecting. Ilera wasn't just any alien, she was part of a race that had long been thought extinct. The Xerian people had vanished centuries ago, leaving only fragments of their existence scattered across the galaxy. How had she ended up here? And why was the predator so intent on guarding her? Liam didn't have the answers, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let the creature get to her. The beast's golden eyes locked onto Liam, its massive form standing in front of Ilera protectively, almost as if daring him to make a move. The moment seemed to stretch on forever, the air thick with tension. Liam's pulse pounded in his ears as he slowly lowered his weapon. The creature was calculating, aware of his presence. And for all its savagery, there was an intelligence there, a purpose. He needed to act, but there was one undeniable truth. The creature wasn't attacking because it wanted to. It was guarding her. It wasn't just a predator, it was something more. And that realization gave Liam pause. He took a step forward, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not here to hurt her," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving the creature. "I'm here to help." For a moment, the creature didn't move, its golden eyes never wavering from Liam's face. Then, almost imperceptibly, it lowered its head, allowing the smallest bit of room between itself and Ilera's fragile form. Liam's heart beat louder in his chest. Taking a deep breath, he carefully approached, making sure every step was deliberate and non-threatening. His hands were trembling as he knelt beside Ilera, checking her pulse. Her skin was cold, and her breathing shallow. She had been unconscious for what seemed like too long. But she was alive, and that was all that mattered. Chapter 3. Unraveling the Past. The jungle around Liam seemed to fall into a quiet, unnatural stillness as he knelt beside Ilera. The air, thick with humidity and the scent of damp earth, felt heavy in his lungs, but he pushed through it. His focus was entirely on her now, on the fragile alien girl who lay unconscious beneath the protection of the creature. The leopard, if that's what it was, hadn't made a move to harm him, but its golden eyes never left him either. It watched closely, assessing his every movement, as if weighing whether to trust him or not. Liam gently reached out, his fingers brushing Ilera's wrist. Her pulse was weak, faint, but it was there. A small, breathless sigh escaped her lips as she stirred slightly, the skin of her face cool to the touch, her body pale. The creature shifted its position slightly, but it didn't make any move to stop Liam. It was as though it had granted him permission to help her, though it still remained cautious and alert. His mind raced. He didn't know how Ilera had ended up here on Xerath, nor how long she had been lying in the jungle with the predator at her side. She didn't look like a typical alien from any species he'd encountered in his years of work in the galaxy. Her features were soft, delicate, yet her eyes, even closed, held an intensity that Liam couldn't ignore. Something about her presence felt different. It was as though there was an ancient intelligence locked within her, one that had been hidden for millennia. She was part of something far more complex than he could comprehend. The predator's low growl broke his train of thought. Liam glanced up, meeting the creature's gaze, and for a moment, there was an unspoken understanding between them. The animal had protected Ilera, and now it was waiting for him to do the same. It wasn't just guarding her out of instinct, it was protecting her purpose, whatever that might be. The puzzle of Ilera's presence, her purpose, was starting to form, but Liam still couldn't grasp the full picture. Taking a deep breath, Liam carefully pulled out a small syringe from his medical kit, hoping to stabilize Ilera. The creature's eyes followed his every move, but it stayed still, a watchful guardian. As he injected the medicine, Ilera's breathing became slightly more even, though her condition was still critical. It was clear she needed immediate care in a more controlled environment than the wilderness could provide. Liam glanced up at the creature, and for the first time, he spoke directly to it. "I don't know why she's here," he said softly, his voice calm but filled with wonder. "But I'm not going to hurt her. She's not just another test subject. She's alive, just like you." The creature's eyes never wavered, but its growl softened, as if acknowledging his words. There was an intelligence in those eyes, something deeper than just animal instinct, and it made Liam's heart pound faster. He didn't know what exactly was happening, but he was beginning to realize that Ilera and this creature were somehow tied together, and the galaxy might hold secrets about them that no one could have expected. With a final glance at the creature, Liam carefully gathered Ilera into his arms. She was light but fragile, and as he stood up, the predator moved slightly, as if ensuring Liam's every step. It was still there, watching, waiting. Liam held Ilera close, his arms steady despite the weight of the situation. He needed to get her back to the station, get her somewhere safe. But there was one problem. The creature wasn't letting them leave easily. "I'm not here to hurt her," Liam repeated, this time more firmly. "We need to go back to the station. She needs help, and I can't do it here." The creature's golden eyes flickered with something curiosity, perhaps, or even an understanding of Liam's words. It didn't move for a long moment, but then it gave a low huff, as if conceding to Liam's intentions. With a final, lingering look, the predator stepped aside, clearing the path. Liam didn't hesitate. His heart still raced, his instincts still on high alert. But he knew that he had been granted the creature's trust, if only for a time. He carefully made his way back to the hovercraft, the creature following them silently, keeping its distance but staying close enough to ensure they weren't threatened. The jungle felt eerily quiet now, the oppressive silence broken only by the low hum of the hovercraft as it took off from the dense underbrush. As they ascended, the predator's golden eyes watched them from the shadows below. It didn't follow, but Liam knew that it was still out there, protecting her in ways he didn't fully understand. The station loomed in the distance as the hovercraft made its way back, and for the first time, Liam allowed himself to breathe. He wasn't sure what awaited them, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Ilera's presence, her very existence, was far more important than he had initially thought. There were layers to this mystery, layers that ran deeper than the surface of the planet. And, somehow, he had been chosen to be part of it. Chapter 4. Unraveling the Truth. Liam was still processing everything as the hovercraft touched down at the station, the familiar hum of the craft now replaced by the quiet whir of the station's life support systems. He had Ilera in his arms, still unconscious but breathing steadily, her body still fragile. The creature, whatever it was, had remained behind in the jungle, its eyes watching from the shadows, but it had allowed them to leave. The question that gnawed at him, however, was why? What was the creature protecting, and why had it been so insistent on keeping Ilera safe? His mind raced with the possibilities. The research team's findings, their encounters with various species on Xerath, the whispers of ancient technologies and lost civilizations, they all felt connected now, all tied to this moment. He didn't know exactly what Ilera was, but he knew that the answers would reveal themselves in time. As he rushed through the corridors of the station, the stark fluorescent lights flickering above him, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Whatever secret lay within Ilera, it was something that the galaxy had been waiting to uncover for centuries. He moved quickly, taking her to the medical bay, where the team of scientists had already gathered. Their eyes widened when they saw him carrying her in, but there was no time for questions. He placed her gently on the medical table, and the team immediately went to work, checking her vital signs and applying treatments. "This is unbelievable," one of the researchers muttered as he scanned Ilera's readings. "Her physiology, it's unlike anything we've encountered. There's something ancient about her. And look at her genetic structure. This is beyond even our wildest theories." Liam stood back, watching in silence as the scientists worked, feeling the weight of the mystery settle over him. The creature, Ilera's strange connection to it, and the whispers of an ancient, forgotten species, this wasn't just a simple rescue mission anymore. This was something far bigger. "You're certain she's from the Xerian race?" another researcher asked. "The last records we have show their extinction centuries ago." "I don't know," Liam replied, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "But whatever she is, she's alive. And we need to figure out why she's here, why the creature was protecting her." Hours passed, but the room remained filled with a quiet intensity. Then, finally, Ilera's eyes fluttered open. The room fell silent as the team paused, their attention focused on her. Liam stood near the door, watching with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Ilera's eyes opened slowly, and as they met his, a flicker of recognition passed through them. She didn't speak at first, but her hand reached out toward him, as if seeking comfort in the only person who had been there for her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice weak but filled with gratitude. "You saved me." Liam moved forward, his heart swelling at the sound of her words. This was the moment when everything changed. There was no going back now. The answers would come, the truth would unfold, and whatever lay ahead for them, they would face it together. But for now, Liam didn't need to know everything. He had done what he set out to do. He had saved her, and that was enough.